Sorry. Yeah, so I'm just really participating in the process and on behalf of the city. So I'm not going to say much, but Natalie Manning, I am the outreach specialist for the Gentilly Resilience District portfolio of projects, which is my reason for being on the call. So I'm just letting you guys know that this call is being recorded and will be available for public consumption. In addition to that, I'll also be taking note of the chat discussion that we have, so that can also be available to you guys. Yep, and I'm gonna hand it over to Sarah.
Great. Well, thanks so much. I know there's been a ton of hard work that has gone into this, so I'm really thrilled to be where we are, and just want to thank all the artists who are on the call for all of your hard I'm also really deeply grateful for our wonderful selection committee, Brian Lee, Nick Aziz, Claire Eidelman-Keith, Kateb Shunar, Peggy Roosevelt, Tanya Jones, and Ron Bechet. You all really represent an incredible diversity of perspectives in both the art, design, and architecture fields, and also in neighborhood and community perspectives. So just want to thank you all so much for your time. I think most everyone kind of knows how this will go, but just as a reminder, we are going to spend about 20 minutes per proposal. And we've asked the artists to kick things off with a very brief, no more than 5 minutes, but potentially even fewer than that, presentation just to kind of reground us in the essentials of their public art proposals. And then the committee will have 10 minutes to ask questions of that artist. And then the remaining 5 minutes of that time slot we'll use for additional discussion by the committee, and then we'll move forward. So I'll just put the order of artists in the chat box. We're a little bit off already, but generally we can kind of see the direction of where we're taking. As Natalie said, this meeting is open to the public, and everything that's said is part of public record. So I'll be taking notes on all this, and the recording will be available. Normally we'd be in the same room together where it's a little bit easier to collect evaluations, but each of the committee members has an evaluation sheet, and so I'll be working with all of you individually to get your scores. And we can kind of go over that process. While you are meeting with the artists, you can make note of your preliminary scores, and then at the end, there will be time for you to kind of go back and discuss amongst each other any proposals that you want to revisit and have more discussion about. So any questions before we begin? And then one other note is that the artists, outside of their time slot, the artists should not, be speaking up during others' time slots. So this is just out of fairness to the other artists who aren't able to participate in the full call. So with that, we are going to be able to share screens. So if at any point I need to pull up images, anything along those lines, I can do that. We can look at images on Submittable, but I'll let Langston go ahead and introduce himself and just give us a short presentation on the basics, and then we'll jump into questions by the committee.
Okay, cool. Hi, thank you. So I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little bit nervous presenting on Zoom, but I don't know why. I'm just gonna go for it.
Don't be.
So I wanted to kind of like come up with a groundbreaking design here, and I think the more that we talk to the park people and the more that I looked at how far the budget could actually take me, the more I gravitated towards just doing something that I knew how to execute well. And so the project that I'm presenting is essentially just a series of murals that would encircle the playground at Fillmore Park, and they would be like historical in nature. I want to have a community-based kind of like storytelling workshop, which people would get paid for to actually construct the final murals. And the sketches that I've attached to my proposal are they're just sort of more like preliminary sketches, or like a rough style idea for how the murals might look, rather than like a final, like this is what I'm going to put there. I'm trying to source ways to have the murals printed. There's a couple of people that do like plastic printing where it's like basically built into weather resistant plastic so that we wouldn't have to deal with paint fading and that they could potentially last for many years. And then additionally to the murals encircling the park, I also want to do a mural on the basketball court, also at Fillmore, that would be similar in style and also about water, but would be a little bit more abstract because, yeah, thank you, Sarah. So that's the sketch, and that's the idea. I don't know. Is that an effective presentation?
Sarah, you got to go off mute.
Sorry. Apologies. I've got multiple screens open. So thanks so much, Langston. I am going to hand it over to the committee for both discussion and just to ask any questions that came up for you all as you reviewed Langston's proposal materials.
I have a question for Langston.
Yeah.
How did you happen to come across the Harold Fisk 1944 Mississippi River maps?
I've just always been a fan of how it looks, honestly. I think I saw it on somebody's wall a long time ago because it's you can like just order it to be printed at any size, and I was just like super into it, basically. I know that it doesn't include New Orleans, but I just think it's like an interesting way to represent river flow and movement, and so I thought it would be fun to incorporate into the design somehow. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question. I mean, I think you obviously have a lot of experience with murals across the city, and so I was just curious as to how you see this one being different from previous projects, and particularly in relationship to like how you see this one engaging with community.
So I think the big difference is that this one has a much bigger budget, so I want to kind of break off a chunk of that and just pay people to tell me what they think the mural should be like. That's like, I think, what I would like to focus on as a big difference between how I've been kind of conducting myself previously and now. I want to like, because I want it to be sort of like a narrative historical mural, I want to get community history from firsthand sources, and then I want to compensate people for sharing that history because I think it's really valuable work, and I understand that we should be.
Hi, Langston. This is Ron. I just wanted to ask you about the material that will be used to print the mural, or that you will print on the mural onto.
So currently, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead. I think you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Currently, I'm looking at like iZone high density laminate panel. From everything I can tell from talking to the company and then my initial research, it's good to go for like over 10 years. It's what they use to make like signs that you see at like parks or in museums, like with placards. So it's not, it's like the image is like baked into the plastic. I don't really understand how it's made, but it seemed like the most UV scratch resistant thing I could find. It's pretty expensive though, so I've been kind of looking around at other options. I was looking at like maybe getting a crunched out aluminum, like a sign. So I'm still kind of fishing for the exact right thing, but high density panel is what I'm leaning towards right now.
Okay.
High density laminate, I think, is the technical thing.
Yeah. Thanks.
Langston, as you're talking about an ACM, or is this a fabric, or this is a actual hard surface?
It's an actual hard surface. So
Okay.
if we would order the mural printed on the panel, it would come packed as panels, and the panels would have like holes for mounting it that could be concealed, and they would just be mounted to the fence structure that's there.
All right. Great.
Hey, it's Claire. Hey, Langston. So just for all the proposals, I had a chance to talk it over with the design team, and we really appreciated this one. We just loved the aesthetic of the artwork and how it combined with the park, and just thought it would really be a great add to the play areas, and I liked that it kind of transformed the basketball court into a place that people could visit or enjoy regardless of their playing. So just want to say thanks, and wonderful.
Thank you. Also, I forgot to mention, so on the basketball court, there's like a section I said was for community dedications. I don't actually know what that means yet. I thought that maybe going forward with the like the community engagement process, I would have like a better sense of what that would entail. But I just wanted to include space for people to be thanked or commemorated, like somewhere in the piece. And I thought the basketball court would be a nice place to do that. I just wanted to clear that up. I know it's in the proposal and maybe didn't make sense.
Yeah. And the court will be painted, right?
Yeah, the court will be painted. Full disclosure, the court will not have the same lifespan as the panels. I'm not entirely sure how long the court painting will last, but I don't think it would last forever. I think if it lasted for 5 years and was in good shape after 5 years, I would be impressed with that, to be honest with you.
Are there any particular ways you see the production or like post-production of this being used educationally? Like, have you had any thoughts around that yet?
I haven't landed on any thoughts around how it can be used educationally, honestly. I think that the murals themselves, because they're like, the goal is to make them historical, could be instructive, and maybe there could be like some type of like guided tour when they first go up. But beyond that, I haven't really come up with like an educational facing part of production.
Deb, did you have any questions? I know this will be right across from you. Not sure you can hear.
Okay.
I think.
Hello, I have a question.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, so my question is longevity and maintenance. So how are we going to keep this mural up past 5 years? I mean, and what's the cost for us to keep it up like yearly, to keep it looking nice like we have it?
So the ones that would go around the playground are going to be printed, so they won't fade like paint would potentially fade, and they shouldn't really require any maintenance. The like playground fence murals should be maybe cleaned occasionally, but like I don't think even cleaning it would be complicated. The basketball court mural will fade over time, definitely, because it's on the ground, it's on the play surface. It could be repainted after it fades significantly, but I think that probably there's no preventative maintenance that could go onto the basketball court. But the upright murals I think should last, a long time.
And the painting, you think about every 13 months or something need a touch up?
I think that it could potentially use it, but I also think that that might be like cost prohibitive and not necessarily like I think that maybe it would be better to just repaint the basketball court entirely after the mural fades. Basically, I think like allowing it to have a lifespan and then having me or another artist create a new one would maybe be a better course of life for the basketball court rather than trying to maintain it exactly as it is, just because it's a play surface and so it's bound to be damaged over time. But it's not like it's going to be painted with like court paint, like they use to paint tennis courts. So it does have like it's designed to be played on. But it definitely fades.
And if somebody decided, you know, I don't want this to happen. If somebody decided to want to graffiti the court, how easy would it be for us to get that up? Is the material using anti-graffiti material?
It's not anti-graffiti, but it'd be easy to paint over it, I think. Like if a section of the court was like intentionally vandalized or damaged, I would be happy to like come out and buff that section. I don't think, like, I'm not necessarily volunteering to like come out and continually maintain the court, but if there were ever any like hateful vandalism or just like unsightly marks that were made intentionally, I would come fix that.
Okay, we gonna hold it. We gonna hold you to that.
I know. Yeah, definitely. I'll definitely.
We got you recorded.
Yeah.
That was my major concern was the longevity and the maintenance, because I know stuff don't last no longer than 5 years anymore. You know.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
This is a lot of money
ones
for a project. Yeah.
A really long time, and I've seen. I mean, there was like even at national parks, it's the same stuff they make national park signage out of. If you can picture that, like those signs that have the map on them and stuff, and those things somehow last forever. I don't really know how. So that's how I got turned on to the material.
Okay, well, that was my major concern, was longevity and maintenance.
Right. Yeah, and I think also the upright murals, they're designed to be cleaned. Like we could clean paint off of them because it's like there's no painted surface there. You can like actually scrape stuff off of them, which is a nice feature.
Thanks, you answered my question.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, any other questions from the committee? More minutes also just for discussion, if you all would like to take some time just to kind of share thoughts, reactions, that'd be great.
So just as a thought here as we close out, Links in the work is obviously solid as always. You know, as you know, who knows who gets selected in this, but as you think about this project moving forward, thinking about the kind of structural elements as you want, you know, as you seek to install these pieces, what and how can those structural elements enhance and support the project? Right now, it seems like you have kind of just a treated wood structure that supports the back edge of these pieces. So as you think about this project and its further development, I would encourage you to think about how the structural elements can support the design and maybe be painted to match or to kind of fit with the kind of flow and pattern of the piece itself. So it's a comprehensive consideration, just to give it some dimensionality, I think.
Yeah, that's really good feedback. That was something that I was considering, but then also was concerned about it from a budget perspective. And so I kind of just decided to present murals and see if I could find from the budget to improve the structure.
Understood. Understood.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yep.
I guess I'm thinking about the engagement portion. I think it's wonderful to include the community in the design. Just thinking about, are you going to have help with that? And do you have a group of people already established that could guide you through working with that neighborhood or with the people in that general area? Those are things that I'm thinking about that might be helpful for you to kind of line up your design with the community input.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely need help. I don't have a team or a group set up already to help me. And I'm hoping that as we like move into the next phase of this project, I'll be able to reach out to some of the people who have put this process together to get a little bit of help there, and then hopefully paying people is a good way to incentivize them also to help me organize it. But I definitely know that I can't do the community engagement portion all by myself, and I have no intention of doing that either. So.
And just as a city representative, we intend to provide the message of the public art placemaking project. This isn't just about, also about making sure that we draw attention to this, because the Digitally Resilience District portfolio in general, Sarah and I were talking about this before the call started, is about so we're not only making the urban environment more resilient, we're also creating spaces to gather around and to spur neighborhood revitalization throughout that process.
And yeah, Ron, so we, the Arts Council has been able to work with the project team that is doing the park redesigns. And so Clara Eidelman Heath and Erin Chang, who's also on the call, are both part of that St. Anthony team. And there's been about a 2-year process of resident and community engagement. And part of the reason that we have such wonderful community members who are part of the selection committee, Kateb, Peggy, and Tanya, is a result of a much larger engagement effort. And so I think each of the artists will really benefit from continuing to be involved in that larger community engaged process. But I'm sure that our selection committee members have some great thoughts about who and how to work with members of the neighborhood moving forward. So yeah. Thanks for that question. Sure. Anyone have final thoughts before we move on to the next proposal? All right, great. Well, thank you so much, Langston. We appreciate you. Thanks for being first on the agenda. It was a little bit nerve-wracking, but you have a great audience. So
thank you so much.
All right. So next up, we have Hannah Shalou and John Kleinschmidt. So Hannah and John are our only artist team applying for this. So I'll let them take it away on kind of reorienting us around their proposal, and then you all can ask questions.
Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah.
I'm going to share my screen. Oops. Okay. Before we get into the proposal, we wanted to take you on a mini journey from the ground up and up and up. A little further. You can kind of see where we are. One last push, and there, a thin sliver of water appears over the canal wall. And seeing water in New Orleans, we think, is such a powerful thing to experience. Our future depends on water here, but it is confoundingly invisible in daily life. Hannah, I think you're muted.
Oh, sorry. Hello, everybody. We do the next slide. To become a water city, we must learn to see water, to become aware of it, to know it, and to be in relationship with it. We must understand both obstacle and opportunity. We propose to bring both into focus with our proposal, Periscope to the Future. As you approach the installation at the Levy Exhibition Hall, straight ahead, you will see the Young Artist Movement installation, Framing the Rain Garden. Beyond, closer to the canal wall, a deconstructed periscope rises up toward the wall, a painted steel disc held aloft by thin columns. There's a mark on the wall, but it's not clear exactly why. As visitors walk towards the periscope, a circle of oyster shells marks a spot where they can stand, turn around, and look up. The giant disc is a mirror, and it reveals water hidden in plain sight. Behind the concrete walls of the London Avenue Canal, the mysterious mark on the wall of the canal now makes sense. It is part of a circle centered within the view in the mirror. A companion mural on the inside of the opposite wall extends the circle, and the two pieces line up to continue the circle, creating a reconnected ecosystem.
Without this instrument of observation, there's no clue to the reality of water or the possibility for beauty behind this wall. We think that that possibility is real. Through this process, on tours at the Water Leaders Institute and the Arts Council, we were lucky enough to peek behind the wall, to visit the pumping station, to catch this unusual view of our own city. We understand that it may take years to reconnect with this water, but this instrument of wonder and observation that we propose, we think could help advance this conversation. Now, a periscope we think of as a tube that has a bend in it and another bend and two mirrors in there, but we kind of stripped it down to its essential element, which is one mirror tilted and the human eye. So when you visit, you are the second mirror. The artwork is activated by the visitor. And to make sure this works, we tested some little prototypes from a tiny drugstore mirror wired to a cardboard tube to catch a very limited glimpse of what's over the wall, to a larger mirror that we put on some sticks and stood on a ladder, and just to catch the first little glimpse of water to test the height. Now these tests were important to say, okay, this really could work, and also to understand, what are we seeing, what's possible to see, and it helped us understand these datums that are so important in New Orleans in such a low-lying landscape. A matter of a foot makes a huge difference, and so we were able to finally understand what being over the wall really felt like on the outside of the canal.
Imagine what it would be like for a 9-year-old kid, or perhaps even someone who's lived in Gentilly their entire life, to see the canal for the first time. It's a strangely rare experience. Even if the bridge nearby doesn't quite get you high enough to see over. In our proposal, we include an alternative budget for a more elaborate mural that would go into more depth about what this reconstructed ecosystem might look like, including the history of water management and infrastructure, and a vision for what an open canal might provide the neighborhood. This mural will be developed with community input.
Both Hannah and I, in our artistic practices, have focused on installations. These are kind of temporary experiences that allow visitors to be immersed in our sometimes strange view of an alternate future. And we like installations. They're temporary. They let you experience something with the wholeness of your body and your senses. And we thought that we really had to create a real experience on the site. This periscope gives you an experience. You suddenly see something that has been hidden in plain sight, and you wonder why. Why is it hidden? Why does it have to be hidden? Perhaps what else is hidden in our city? Why can't we sit on the banks of the canal like Bayou St. John?
Anna and John, we're a little past 5 minutes. So I want to make sure we have enough time for questions.
Okay.
Yeah. Hannah, I don't want to
That's it.
cut you off if you have something else to jump in on. but
Do you want to just
Last
go
point.
to our last slide? Yeah, we were just talking about the Levy Exhibition Hall and the fact that you know, it's not, we've been there a lot and it's not really so used by the neighborhood, but we feel like our work could be a way to really activate the site and, you know, continue this exhibition hall sort of ends with this history, but sort of stepping in and how do we look forward and continue to imagine the future of this neighborhood, and also kind of creating like a mini art campus alongside Carl Joe and the YAM Students Project. That would really make this site a place for people in the neighborhood as well as visitors. Yeah, that's it. Thank you, guys.
Thanks. All right, questions from the committee?
I have a question about the proximity to the flood wall. Will you have to get permission from the Corps of Engineers to dig within 15 feet of the flood wall in order to put your foundation in for the periscope?
Yeah, I can. So it has to be, I can answer this question because I've done some fielding of various questions with the Army Corps and Flood Protection Authority. So you do have to get permission for anything within 300 feet. But the kind of real strict area is within 15 feet of the levee toe. So Hannah and John's proposal is outside of that 15-foot marker where essentially nothing would be approved. We also have talked a little bit with the flood wall, as long as nothing structurally is, you know, changes the flood wall itself. So.
That's great. Those were also two of the questions coming from the design team, just in terms of feasibility.
Yeah, and we've talked with them, or I've talked with them somewhat extensively, because a few different artists had different project ideas around the site, including Carl and the students. So we will have to go through an approval process, but we're kind of right outside of the really strict maintenance area. And they actually just approved a new house to be built next door to the levee breach site, which involves pile driving and much more kind of extensive interventions. So, so this proposal should be, it might take us a little while to get approval just because it's more approvals, but they are supportive of the idea.
So I have a quick question about any ideas around kind of desire paths or connections from the existing condition to where you're going. How do you want people to approach a piece of artwork? And if you don't want them to, if you want them to approach it in any given direction, that's also fine. But I just wonder what your thoughts are on that.
That's a good question. We kind of lined up the I feel like there's a line and a point. You know, the wall of the young artists movement is the line, and ours is this little dot. And we lined up the dot at the center of the canopy at the levee hall. And so right now you come to the end of that canopy and there's a kind of bare spot, and you see the marker of the Katrina elevation of the water. But it really kind of sends you towards the wall. So we thought that was a really, you know, it's hot out there. You know, you take shelter in the pavilion, and it kind of sends you to that point. So, Hannah, anything else there? I didn't mean to take over.
Yeah, we've been talking with Carl Joe about just the possibility of sharing that site, and just as long as it felt like there was enough breathing room and sort of walking around, and sort of the base of the periscope will be like where the viewer is meant to stand to get that view. But we're also realizing that, like, you know, as you sit on the levee, you'll probably also be able to see your reflection in the mirror, so you can interact it with the ways that we're not like specifically imagining, but that it could also be viewed from different ways, and sort of just like a different way of locating you on that site.
mean, but it is like 30, what, 20, 25 feet away from the edge of that, the end of that condition, right? The end of that kind of canopy structure.
Something like
Or-
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's maybe, yeah, in that neighborhood. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
I know Katab had a question. Did you want to jump in? Let's see, where is it? The question was about if there are high winds, whether the artwork would become a hazard.
That was one of our first misgivings about when we were working on this, because it's not a flag, it's flat and it's stiff. In talking to our fabricator, we've talked about even making the mirror in two pieces, so it's smaller single pieces to let wind through, or perhaps even using a perforated mirrored disc. I think that will come down to a kind of an engineering problem to double check the foundations and make sure that it's anchored, as rigidly as it needs to be.
There's a structural, I'm just looking at the drawings again. There's two structural bracings at the top of this. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Looks like
Hannah,
it.
do you want to talk about those, Hannah, and what those might mean?
Yeah, well, we're in kind of thinking about making it windproof. We sort of built in these rings moving up the structure, but then also wanted those to incorporate the different sort of like datums of where you are based on where the water is, and sort of connecting. So the periscope is not only connecting you to the water over the canal, but also helping you understand where your body is in relationship to the Mississippi River and different sort of important water heights to living in New Orleans. And those will be the heights of those different rings. So those rings will be structural, but they're also like giving your body sort of a somatic relationship to, like, I'm in Gentilly, which is 5 feet below sea level, and the river, that's like, you're like at least 15 feet below the river. So kind of helping you understand through your body New Orleans' relationship with water. And then you're also seeing the canal. And yeah, in terms of wind, we tried to figure out the engineering as best we could, but we didn't want to, pay for the engineering design before we have been selected.
Yeah, of course.
We had a question about the gathering at the base and just the size selected. I was just curious to hear more about kind of how you arrived at the general size and proportions, and like how many people you intended to use it at once.
Hannah, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, we did all these tests with different mirrors, and somehow it felt like a 6-foot mirror was gonna really like do the trick of, like, when you're 20 feet away from it, really seeing enough, and that size just felt big enough. And I guess the bottom is about a 6-foot radius. That's probably a couple people, but since it's open, I think you can kind of like freely move through it. And yeah, it's kind of funny that now 6 feet is like this magical number in the time of coronavirus, but yeah, that wasn't really a part of it. I don't know, what do you think about that, John?
Yeah, it in some ways it was also about the largest polished mirror we could get, and we're still chasing down that exact dimension, but we looked at a table at Hannah's studio, and that felt like a good space to be in. So I guess it was just a kind of gut instinct. Yeah.
Thank you.
Just as a quick time check, we have about 4 more minutes on Hannah and John's proposal. Again, the committee can come back to different proposals later on, but just wanted to keep us on track.
Well, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'll wait for you. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to follow up with comments just from the design team. We really liked the connection to the channel and just bringing that awareness of the water levels. I thought was really powerful. So thank you.
And my question was, given the water levels, how will you let people know or denote that? Will there be interpretive material that's somewhere near, or something to help people understand what those rings mean going up? About the water levels, water table levels that are around in the near environments.
Yeah.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, we imagined some sort of sign at the bottom, and in our proposal, we didn't really address color yet, or that also felt like something we needed to kind of, like the color of the structure, but I think color would play a role, but definitely there'd probably be some sign at the base that would maybe help with, like the color coding of the rings might tell you that information, and also, again, with the circle, it's sort of like a placeholder, it's like a white circle in our proposal, but we hadn't really finalized that.
Okay.
Any other thoughts or questions?
I guess just one more thing. I'm sorry.
Yeah, please.
And so between the rings, I guess going vertically, just thinking about, will people think it's something to climb?
That's a good question. We would try and get that first ring as high as possible and still have it act as bracing, but there is, if someone's determined with someone to help them get up there, it's inviting. But right. I think it's important that is at least out of normal arm's reach, the first ring,
right?
Which is kind of why they're clustered towards the top, but that is, it might look inviting. Yeah. But that's why there's a mirror. You don't have to climb. Right. You can get the view without climbing.
Right.
Also, everything in the world is climbable. So
absolutely, in some way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, in some way. But I come from an era where playgrounds used to look just like that, right? You can climb on things that had steel bars. So. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Hannah and John. Appreciate you. We will move on to Rachel David's proposal. So Rachel is here by phone, and I have a short video that I'm going to share for her. Rachel, is there anything that you wanted to say before I show the video?
No, I really appreciate your all taking the time, and I wish I could see you, but I would appreciate moving because my phone is charging, but it's also losing power at the same time. So yeah, sorry. I'm in transit. Okay. I've been working. Thanks.
All right, I'm gonna get into it.
Yeah, thank you.
My proposed installation, entitled Islands, occupies a landscape that is inundated in heavy rains and drains slowly to assist the city's pumping system to handle heavy rain events. The sculpture allows the public to easily envision climate change. This is accomplished within an archipelago of small hummocks referencing tree stumps or barnacles fashioned from hand-forged and fabricated steel and concrete. These sculptural forms serve as seats and a pathway of stepping stones in the Fillmore Playground bioswale and its adjacent banks. The simple forms are beautifully crafted with delightful details in a simple, elegant style. The inspiration for these hummocks are the cypress stumps and barnacles seen in the bayous of Louisiana, the remnants of trees logged long ago and lost to storms and age. Responding to the topography of the setting, the hummocks are arranged to allow people to sit in quiet contemplation of the plantings or to interact with other visitors while surrounded by native vegetation. During the periods of high water, the hummocks will serve as stepping stones for people to enter the field from the sidewalk and avoid treading on the plantings in the bioswale. The forms resonate with the history of the land. This part of the city was marshland until the pumping system was created post-World War II. The large cypress trees now are mostly gone, and we live with water encroaching from below and flooding us from above. I developed this idea hoping to draw people into the natural spaces that can help us decompress and take moments to ourselves or have intimate conversations. In my work, I often mix symbols of conversation and interaction with themes of environmental and social justice. In this proposal, I blend my furniture practice with my interest in social and environmental justice, and with that, work to create space in an urban setting to appreciate the natural world. This is a model representing my proposal. The placement is not set in stone, but I think that it's an elegant arrangement that could serve well. It is made of mesh that represents the bioswale angles, and the forms are scale 1.5 to 1 foot, and there's a little person in there with a rad hairdo showing how an average size person would relate to the piece. As the bioswale fills and empties with water, the viewers can see how climate change and changing water levels affect our immediate surroundings and everyday life. As the water fills and empties, the hummocks will act as an unofficial marker system, noting the depths of inundation and the lack of water in dry times. It is also a place to revel in the wonder of nature and ourselves. As unnerving as it is to see how closely we live to rising water, this project is an important sign of how New Orleans has acknowledged the rising water levels, resulting in the consistent flooding we suffer in the city.
All right.
I
Committee,
just wanted
all
to
questions. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Rachel.
I just wanted to add really quick that part of the reason that the placement isn't, I'm not completely married to the placement, is because it would make me feel, I think it would be really fun if community members had interest in just coming and placing the shells before the concrete is poured. In my proposal, you could see in the work plan that would be somewhere within like the design, like working with other contractors. But it would be fun for me if people wanted to come, and they won't be, no one will have to get their hands dirty, but they could be like, I want that one there. I like sitting on this one. So yeah, that's just something that I forgot to add into that little video.
All right, great. I'll turn it over to committee members to ask questions.
Yeah, I guess building off of that idea, do you have any other plans for engagement with the community with the project?
Prior to occupation?
Prior to or during or after, just any at any period.
Well, it's a seating place, so it's like it's a place to hide. Used. It's not a viewing thing. It's a using thing. So the whole time of its life, which would be long and stable, it goes untight. It would it would be a community space for use, but it's not. I mean, people could come and help pour concrete, but like, there's not a lot of fabricating. I mean, there's a lot of fabricating, but there's not that much. Unless someone's a fabricator and they want to get a job with me. Otherwise, no, not really. That's.
I had some question about the material, because I know this has come up for the design team about metal being hot to the touch when used as a seating element, but it looks like that might have been considered, by the way, there's a partial wrap, and I was wondering if you had.
Yeah, absolutely. Very important. Metal gets very hot. And so the top of these is a polished concrete. So hopefully it would be a light, it wouldn't be dyed, it would be a natural concrete color in the hopes that like it doesn't get super duper hot in the summer. And it would be smooth to the touch. Additionally, occasionally weathering steel can have some rub off. And so that's avoided by having this partial wrap where there aren't places to lean against the metal. The metal is a viewable area, and would be like you wouldn't rub on it. Placement design, and it wouldn't burn you because God, it's terrible.
Yeah. I guess my question too is about the material. Is it Corten steel?
Yeah, well, yes, it would be of the same variety, but probably not that brand name. That company went out of business in the 70s, right, or in the 80s, yeah, or 90s. Yeah.
I guess just thinking about what happens with the oxidation and how it can bleed into the concrete
that would be, I mean, to me, that's lovely. So as the artist, it's not a problem. That's part of the plan. And it speaks for resting that is also self-resting.
Okay. So it's somewhat planned that that could happen and be a part of the beauty of the piece.
Yeah, I mean, all of finishing work, all of these materials that people are talking to are inevitably somewhat living finishes, and so in order to kind of take that and work with it instead of work against it, this has been my solution in public work that I've done around the city and the country, and it's very stable once it's done. It's an incredibly stable material and very durable. So it's, you know, if it's good enough for big dogs like Richard there, it's certainly good enough for little me. I just think I like its effect on concrete. I think that
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. One to note.
Tanya, you made it. Welcome.
My apologies, but I'm here.
No problem. No problem. We will fill you in.
Okay, thank you.
So Tanya,